Hey everyone, and welcome to Tugboat, where we help you settle for more. We talk about insurance claim estimates, we talk about property damage, we talk a lot about self-advocacy, how to stand up for yourself, how to negotiate, how to make sure that you're getting everything that you're owed. Like I said, mostly we're going to talk about that in terms of an insurance claim, but some of these lessons you can take into other transactions, other negotiations as well. Today, the topic that we're going to go over, that I wrote down for us to explore, I just wrote, insurance claim estimates are wrong. It's pretty broad. I'll let us explore it a little bit, Aaron. I'll throw it over to you. One of the notes that I have is just the fact that they call it an estimate seems a little bit off sometimes.
Right. If you haven't had a claim before, an estimate is that first thing that you're going to get after your adjuster's been out to actually look at your property, if that's the way that your claim goes. But in most cases, it is. And so an adjuster will come out, inspect the damage, and then you will get a document that's going to tell you how much your insurance company is offering to pay for that. Regardless of what the amount is or kind of how it came about, it'll usually say estimate at the top of that document. And an estimate, if you get it from a contractor, is usually really early, right? If you had a contractor come out and quote a job and they give you an estimate, it's preliminary, right? It's
simple too, right? It's usually one piece of paper might say like kitchen and then the subcategory for cabinets, floors, and countertops or something like that.
Estimates are by nature loose, but that doesn't carry over when the carrier does their estimate. They treat it like it's a quote for repairs, and they measure other estimates
or other quotes.
They measure everything else that you're going to get against that as though it were like hard and fast and not exactly what they said. It's not treated as though it's an estimate. It's not treated as preliminary when it comes from the carrier, and that can be a real challenge, right? They use the word and that is in fact the function of the document, right? They're doing it often before the repairs have been fully, or the demolition has been fully completed. They're doing it before all of the damage has been actually exposed. Oftentimes your insurance adjuster is going to come out right away. Things are still closed up. Things are still wet. They're not fully dried out yet. And that's when they are estimating, and they haven't fully explored the full extent of the damage. But then they're hesitant to accept the estimates and quotes that come in as that scope expands.
Yeah. I have learned after years of advocating for others and helping people advocate for themselves, that different insurance companies treat what we call supplements differently, right? Some of them seem to expect it, right? And some might even explain this concept that we're talking about to the homeowner, the property owner, pretty early in a claim. But others won't. And others will make it really difficult on the contractor, on the homeowner, on whoever is managing that claim to get those supplemental costs approved. So say the estimate for the kitchen starts out at $10,000. It's still an estimate, right? But then once they start pulling the cabinets apart, they learn some things about them, right? They're a little higher grade. They also learn that the flooring runs underneath, that the material is just going to cost a little bit more than that software priced it in that area. Whatever it is, there's all sorts of things you can learn as the project gets underway. And asking for those costs, to your point, is treated very differently at different times. I was just told this week by a contractor who's what's called a program vendor for the insurance company, which means they are a contractor that is sent out by the insurance company very often, right? And they are presented as someone that is fairly independent, right? And that contractor, I was just talking to them about a claim that we were helping with somebody. I know this person. We were talking about a supplement that a user needed and some additional items that might be there. And they said, well, you know how hard, I'm not going to say the name of the insurance company, but you know how hard this insurance company makes it for us to get supplements paid, right? And they're being presented as an independent contractor, and they're saying this insurance company who's using my name as an independent source of authority on this claim is dictating to me whether or not I'm allowed to supplement for higher costs that might come up during the claim process, right?
Which is something they would do on any other job, right? If it was a non-insurance job, they would have an estimate, and they would have a statement about how that was subject to change based on things, and then they're being robbed of that. What is an essential part of actually bidding and adapting to the job as it changes?
But you use the tools that you have available to you to get the upper hand in the negotiation, right? And so insurance companies will utilize the phrase estimate when it is to their benefit, meaning the homeowner will call and be like, hey, this seems really low, and the adjuster might try to assuage some of those fears by saying like, oh, you know what, don't worry, we can just supplement it down the road if any additional costs come up, without telling the homeowner that I'm going to make that really difficult to get those approved down the line. So they'll use that to their benefit at that moment, and then flip to the other side later in the claim and be like, well, no, the contractor agreed to do it at this price before. Why are they coming at me with a higher price now? Right. And so then they'll switch to the other side and then stop talking about it as if it's an estimate, because that helped them get over one hurdle earlier. And then later, to get over the next hurdle for them, which is to not pay more money, they'll be like, oh, no, you said you could do it for this much money, and now you're asking for more. Why would you need more? Yeah, we'll do another video, another talk I have on the docket for us to talk about what happens when your claim is underpaid, and the things that you don't know about it is something I'd like to explore as well. But I'll talk about a little bit here, meaning that when an estimate is wrong. So say your insurance company pays you a certain amount for your kitchen, and say it's $20,000, and your contractor thinks that job should cost $30,000, but they want to keep the job, right? They want to make you happy. They want to be able to complete this. They want to make some money. And so what is that contractor going to do?
They're going to cut corners.
They're going to cut corners.
Yeah, they're going to make it work.
And we see this, right? And the ways that they make it work is by maybe getting lesser materials, which is what we see probably most often, right? And because a lot of homeowners don't quite understand maybe the difference between an average grade and a high quality cabinet and the materials that go into that. A contractor might, push a little harder to get those vinyl floors rather than those engineered wood floors.
Yeah,
right?
Just that little bit of difference, right?
A little bit of difference. So they'll build their margin in by doing some of those things. And I can understand why that's happening. I don't think it's justified.
They're downgrading the quality of the materials, not necessarily the work, but downgrading the quality of the materials to meet the budget supplied by the insurance company.
So we're going to do a video about, I just refinished my own hardwood floors, right? And I looked at how many pieces of sandpaper they account for in Xactimate, and it's way too low. And because my floors were not that bad and required way more. But my point is, I've heard contractors talk about that the hourly rates that the software allows for are actually pretty good oftentimes. And so I think where they're cutting corners at times is getting people that are willing to work for a cheaper rate, right? So that's where sometimes it is substandard work, right? You're getting your floor guy to go that doesn't do tile work typically, like, well, can you go do this bathtub surround? And because that's what makes it possible for you to keep this job, and doing your best to make this client happy with the constraints that contractor has, because he knows I'm not going to get paid the rest of this money that I need to do the standard of work that I'd really like to do based on what the insurance company has said they're going to pay. Getting back to the topic of insurance claim estimates are wrong. There's another much more straightforward way that this is true, in that the vast majority of insurance claim estimates that we review are simply wrong because they're just missing things or using the wrong line items from their own software.
Sure.
So not just wrong in like this more obscure way that we've been talking about, but in a more direct way. And like, oh, they forgot to include the floor that's in your laundry room, right? They didn't put a detach and reset of the washer and dryer that are in that laundry room. They didn't include a fixture supply line for this thing that had to get removed, and they couldn't put the same one back on. They're just simply wrong in those ways. And we can say this confidently because how much more money is a Tugboat user typically getting once they've advocated for more?
Yeah, it's 50%.
50%, right?
Yeah.
And these are homeowners that are
They're just advocating for themselves.
Homeowners are advocating for themselves. They're not claim experts. They're not able to write their own estimates, right? That are going to do some software trickery that you might be able to do, or change price lists, or even use code upgrade the way that a public adjuster might be able to advocate for. They're not making the same kind of a threat an attorney can make, right? They're simply asking why questions, pointing out things that we've helped them see are missing from an estimate, maybe like a detach and reset or like a continuous floor, things like that. So it's things that insurance companies are fairly realistically admitting, or fairly quickly admitting oftentimes. Like, oh, you're right. Yeah, we're wrong. We forgot to put this in there. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. The paint color does continue onto this wall. Oh, you're right. Yeah, new drywall does require this many coats of paint and not what we put on there. So they're simply wrong.
So even within the more direct, like why the estimates are simply wrong because they're missing or have the wrong line items, you touched on a couple of different ones. Like one of it's like, yeah, items are just missing. Items, they're using the wrong items. But you also touched on like within a specific line item. One that you mentioned that jumped out to me was when you mentioned the water lines. So like how they interpret what's included within a line item will sometimes ignore what is actually listed within that line item.
100%,
right?
yeah.
They'll take the name of, and when we say line items, it's just like literally how the software that they use to estimate names how they're going to repair a portion of that claim, anything. So there'll be dozens, hundreds sometimes of line items on an estimate.
If it says remove and replace a lower cabinet, right? That includes the cost of buying that material, of pulling off the old one that's there, putting on the new one that's there, the nails that go into it. So like it includes
the glue, these things, the finish.
Yeah.
Sometimes not.
So you have to have some understanding, or be willing to look each time when you don't have an understanding of what that line item includes and what it doesn't include. It's one of the things that we'll have Tugboat users do often. Because they don't know what's in line items hardly ever, right? Unless they've worked in insurance or they've done some research, which is great when they have. But there are plenty of times where we're encouraging a Tugboat user to simply ask what is included in this line item. And we'll see adjusters either flat out lie about it or they're just making another mistake, right? They'll say like, oh, this includes the supply line when it doesn't. So we started this talk saying that the topic is insurance claim estimates are wrong. There are many ways that they're wrong. We find that most of the time they are wrong, especially the first pass at it. They're treated like they're final when they're not, or they're treated like they're an estimate and then later treated like that estimate was final based on who's looking at it and who's talking about it. Essentially, if you want to ensure that your estimate is as correct as possible, it takes some effort either from a really good and engaged contractor to understand what the insurance company sent and how to respond to it, or to really understand their numbers and how to present them to the insurance company and help you advocate to get those covered. Or it takes a really active homeowner that's going to be able to do that, property owner that's going to take the time, ask the questions, make sure that those are getting there. And it's absolutely worth it. Right? We talk about what's the difference in advocating for your claim and not advocating for your claim. Well, it's getting the countertops that you actually wanted in your kitchen, right? It's not having to buy the off-the-shelf cabinets in that kitchen, but being able to order the ones you really liked and get them in the color that you really liked, because that's the quality that was there before and you knew how to ask for the right things. Right. And so if you can start from the understanding that insurance claim estimates are very, very often wrong in one way or another. And if you know how to explore that and ask the right why questions and how questions, that you can uncover quite a bit of value that was just missing in those estimates. So we'll talk about it more, I'm sure, and it'll come up in other topics when we talk about contractors, when we talk about adjusters. Estimates is so much of what an adjuster does. You inspect a loss, you figure out if it's covered, you write an estimate for damages, and help a claim get paid. So it's going to come up really often. It is a lot of what Tugboat is doing, is helping people to understand those, to review them, to ask the right questions about them. So We'll talk a lot more about it. If anybody has any questions about their insurance claim estimate, if they have questions about the process or what they're looking at, they can always reach out to us. They can go to Tugboat's website and sign up there. They can send us an email at hello@tugboat.claims. They can send us a DM on social media. We'll answer it there. We love engaging property owners and learning really what are the questions that come up. We take a lot for granted because we've been looking at these estimates for so long now, that we're surprised oftentimes at the questions that come up. Like, I didn't even realize that this was such a big unknown. So certainly send us your questions. There's no dumb question. There's nothing that you should be expected to understand by looking at one of those estimates. And you'll be a lot better for it if you just approach it with some curiosity and the attitude that you should be advocating for yourself. So we'll catch you next time. Thanks for joining us.